The traditional double swing barbarian might be one of the most powerful mid to late leveling builds I've ever played. And that's still true even in this weird world full of Dust Devil barbarians. Let's talk about it. Now, the skills that I used on this one are pretty interesting because I didn't go with any of the guides or anything like that. This one is a full homemade, self-made build. So let me show you what I got going on over here. And buckle up because you're going to question some of the things. I used some, at least, ideas from other places. Just take a look. Let's see. I personally started with lunging strike. I love the gap closer from this and charge. We'll get to charge in a minute, but this is probably my favorite basic skill for barbarians. And then for the main skill, we obviously maxed out double swing. And then with the rune, we go furious double swing so we can stack berserking. And berserking is a very large part of this build, so this is super important. The passive that we use here is going to go hand in hand with our fury generator, which is lunging strike, and it's just going to give us more fury whenever we use it. As for the shouts, most build guides and things like that recommend only using one shout and then using a couple other things. Most of the time, I actually run all three, but for the sake of this one, I'm only running two. And one of those two is rallying cry with the tactical rune. The tactical rune is going to give us a little bit more fury generation. And the other one is challenging shout, which is going to give us dramatic damage reduction from everything that's around us whenever we use this. And then, of course, the rune that we use there is tactical as well, again, for more fury generation. You'll notice throughout the video, we actually have an abundance of fury, which is not a bad thing. The passive in this part of the tree, I like going with imposing because it gives you so much more maximum life. On the next part of the tree, we have a maxed out charge. We like having a low cooldown on this ability. And then the rune that we use on this one is power charge, which again is going to reduce the cooldown even further. And then a couple of the passives, we obviously have swiftness because it gives us run speed, and I'm kind of a slut for run speed, let's be honest. We have 3 points into this, and this. And this is going to give us 12% damage reduction while berserking. Prolific is going to give us 18% fury generation while we're berserking. And then battle fervor is going to activate berserking anytime we use a brawling skill, like charge. So anytime you charge, you're berserking for 3 seconds, and then anytime you're using double swing, you're enhancing that by 2 seconds every hit. Do you kind of follow the importance of berserking yet? Because if not, we'll get there. The next part of the tree, we only have a couple of passives, one of them being Pit Fighter. This is going to give us more damage to close enemies and then damage reduction from distant enemies. So if you're like me, your arch nemesis is corpse bows. They're going to do just a little bit less damage to you. They're still going to one-shot your ass and send you back to the spirit healer. And then the other passive that I have over here is Slaying Strike, which is going to give us more damage to injured enemies. So that'll kind of help us execute bosses and elites. Now, in the ultimate part of the tree, I like the idea of becoming a Super Saiyan. So always, I'm going to choose Wrath of the Berserker over any of the other ultimates for a barbarian. It's just such a fun skill to use. And then a couple of the passives that I use in this tree, I have 3 points into Duelist, which is going to give us more attack speed when we're using one-handed weapons, which we do with double swing. And then I originally had 1 point into Tempered Fury just so we can get 3 into Furious Impulse, because each time you swap weapons, you gain 6 fury, and that's anytime you go from double swing to charge or lunging strike or anything like that. So you have a ton of fury generation. And then on the key passive part of this tree, there are 2 options that I like. One of them is Walking Arsenal, and that's what I chose here for this guide specifically. But if you find yourself having an excess of fury and you really need somehow or some way to spend it, definitely go Unbridled Rage, because again, this build has a ton of fury generation, so you can easily get away with using something like Unbridled Rage. Now, for the main aspects on this build, I'm trying to not use Dust Devils for the first time ever in Season 4, just to see where we can get to, and I'll tell you right now that this Double Swing Barbarian can do it. So normally I would recommend that we use the Wind Lasher aspect, but again, we're trying to not use Dust Devils right now, so ignore that. But Noodle, why wouldn't you want to use Dust Devils? They're the most overpowered thing in the game. I don't know, I don't like conforming just as much as everybody else does, okay? Let's just try something a little different here. Follow me for a minute. The first one that I'm going to recommend is Accelerating, because it's going to give you more attack speed every time you crit. Expectant is going to give you a damage boost every time you lunging strike. And then Edge Masters is going to give you more damage based on how much rage you have left in the tank. As for the support and defensive aspects, we have Vocalized Empowerment for rage generation. Voracious Rage is going to give us more rage on kill. Might is going to be active pretty much all the time because we use lunging strike to either close gaps or to generate rage, so that's going to give us 20% damage reduction. And then obviously we have Disobedience, which is insanely important for pretty much every build in Diablo 4, and that's going to give us that bonus armor that we all like. Now, the stats on the double swing build, or at least on this double swing build, the 2 that I prioritize more than anything is strength and fury generation. And then secondary to that, we go the traditional critical strike chance or critical strike damage. As for the defensives, those are totally normal. You're just going for life, all res, or armor. Now, for the Paragon on this one, I'm going to leave a link to the max roll guide on the Dust Devils version of this in the description in the comments down below, because the Paragon board that I was using for the footage that you see behind my head right here was something that I just put together on a whim on the test server just so I can see how strong double swing is without using any Dust Devils or following the conformity or anything like that. It ended up being really fucking strong even without the Dust Devils. So the main things that you want to focus on for the Paragon board is just what glyphs that you want to use, and those are going to be Ire, here. The other one is ambidextrous, and then the third one is going to be territorial. Now, the idea with everything on the Paragon board is you're either going to get a huge amount of bonus damage or a good amount of damage reduction based on whatever you're doing, but this build specifically has a lot of berserking generations, so a couple of these actually modify how much damage you do and or take during your berserking periods, which on this build is pretty much always because of that double swing rune that we're using. Now, some of the end game gear that you can go for before you jump into doing like the Dust Devil build or anything like that. Jorit's helm is fantastic because you can double stack berserking, making you kind of feel like a Super Saiyan 2. I'm kind of a nut for Dragon Ball. I have all 7 balls tattooed on my arm because I like ball. I digress. Tibalt's pants are going to be fantastic because every time you use charge, you're going to generate a bunch of resource and also bonus damage. And then this one I found really interesting. Yen's Blessing boots are going to auto cast whatever one of your shouts are on cooldown already. And that's super interesting because if we look back at one of the aspects that we have and we're generating Fury per second every time we have a shout on, we're pretty much going to be topped up on Fury almost always, or literally always, which kind of goes hand in hand with using Unbridled Rage as a key passive if you wanted all that bonus damage. As a caveat, I don't own a pair of Yen's Blessing, so if you do, can you tell me if it's as overpowered as it sounds? Because that's just insane if it is. Now, the playstyle on this build is pretty simple. You gather around all the mobs as much as you can, you pull the pull string on your fucking lawnmower, and you go to absolute pound town. This build generates so much Fury, so you can literally just double swing until your heart is absolutely full of joy, which, if we're talking about me, is never, but we're not here for that. We're here for the build here. Like we were saying earlier, it is super important to keep any of your shouts up because that's going to keep your Fury generating non-stop. And then your ultimate, Wrath of the Berserker, is honestly only going to be used for elites and or bosses. Or if you just feel like becoming a Super Saiyan 2 halfway through a dungeon, you can do that too. I'm not going to stop you. In fact, there's nothing that really can stop you. Now, objectively, this build actually has amazing AoE clear and incredible boss damage. You may think it's rather limited just by the melee range of double swing since it's only in the arc in front of you, but this build has so much movement that you're never in one place for longer than half a second. Now, the only objective downside to this build is it can be a little squishy, which is why most people actually use Bash instead of Lunging Strike, because Bash is going to give you a super stacking Fortify, and then some of your other things you can shift into that in the skill tree, like for passives and such. I put this up on the Pit Clapometer, and without any tempering, any stat optimizations or anything like that, it actually put up a 4-minute and 32-second average. And that slots it, beep boop beep, checking notes, almost directly in the dead center of all of the builds that I've tested so far. Now, in my opinion, this build is actually pretty damn insane, even without the use of any Dust Devils or anything like that. This thing really is kind of a gateway drug. It gets you that feeling of becoming a powerful barbarian. Now, obviously, above all else, you should play the Dust Devil aspect. This is just me playing this one without the Dust Devils to see if it was actually viable still. And in reality, it kind of is, but it's going to hit a dead stop way sooner than Dust Devils is. Now, that aside, this thing felt absolutely badass to play, and I'm going to give it an easy 9 out of 10. Now, I always have to ask, I know it's been a couple of weeks into the season so far, but what have you been playing this season in Diablo 4? You'll have to let me know in the comments down below, and on your way down there, maybe like this video and subscribe because they're free, and they really help out the channel here. And if you want to go the extra mile, I do try to stream once in a while here on YouTube whenever my schedule allows it. And the best way to stay up to date on whenever I am doing that is join our Discord and pay attention to the announcements tab in there, and feel free to maybe introduce yourself if you want to. Or lurk. You can lurk. I don't care. I love lurkers. That's okay. But it's a really good way to connect to the Noodle Gang, so if you need anything, just let me or anybody else know in there. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and if you're bored, YouTube is going to recommend this next one for you. Happy grinding, travelers, and we'll see you in Sanctuary.